Episode 3 of The Acolyte is here, and...
Is this the end for Star Wars? Is this the worst episode ever? Is this show trash?
No.
Aww.
This third episode gave us the perspective of what happened on Brendock 16 years ago from Osha's point of view. And although it missed a giant piece to the puzzle, this episode gave us so much information about witches in Star Wars and how Mae and Osha came to be. But there's a lot to get into, so let's break this all down. Episode 3 is titled Destiny.
It is your destiny.
And the destiny in this episode is a lot different than the one that Palpatine was talking about here. But this episode opens on Brendock 16 years earlier than the events we saw in episode 1 and episode 2. After it was explained by Master Soul in episode 1 that he believed Mae died in a fire on Brendock, along with the rest of the witches, and Osha was the only one who survived. Now this episode starts under this yellow tree with a younger version of Osha. This is a bunta tree. Now that might sound familiar because in episode 2, we see Mae and Chimere use the leaves from a bunta tree to create the poison that kills Master Torbin. But under this tree, Osha is playing with these butterfly-looking creatures, and she's using the Force or magic to mess with them. As the younger version of Mae shows up and asks her what she's doing all the way out here. It's too dangerous to be beyond the walls of the witch's home. Around this tree, we see what looks to be ruins, and I actually think it's possible that there used to be some sort of Jedi temple on Brendock. Now currently in canon, there is no evidence of this. It doesn't exist. But later on, we see Osha draw the Jedi's symbol. And how would she even know what that is unless she saw it somewhere on the planet? Possibly on these ruins. Mae then uses the Force or magic to grab one of these butterfly creatures out of the air too, but she is going to kill it, and Osha has to tell her to stop. Immediately you realize that these two are very different. Mae is more the dark side and Osha is more the light. It just so happens that they are twins in the balance between the light and the dark, but we'll get to that in just a second. Mae asks Osha why she always runs off alone, and Osha says that she doesn't want to do the Ascension. The Ascension is just a ceremony that allows Osha and Mae to become official witches. Mae tells Osha that it's not safe out here and that they have to go back. And on their way back, they are found by Mother Coral. Mother Coral is a Zabrak. Might look familiar because of Darth Maul or Savage Opress, but this species has a home on Dathomir. She says that there are consequences for breaking the rules. And as Osha says that she's old enough to leave the fortress walls, Coral says that the rules are there for a reason, as she looks around and says, "Come with me." We then zoom out to see a younger Master Soul looking at them from behind a tree. The witches can't leave their fortress because the Jedi are there to spy on them. We then see inside the walls of this witch's coven, and as you can tell right away, they are all females inside this witch's coven. And this has been true about witches since day one. All the way back in the Clone Wars, when they were introduced into canon, the witches of Dathomir were all females. And that has always been the case since they were originally introduced. So for all of you that are complaining out there that these are all women, clearly you got to get up to date on your witches knowledge. But we then get introduced to Mother Anisea. She is the actual mother to these two girls, which doesn't really make sense because, as I just said, witches have always been females. But we'll get to that in a second. Mother Anisea tells the two girls to go off to the common room for their training session, as Anisea and Coral have a conversation. Coral tells her that they left the fortress again, and she asks, did anyone see them? Coral says, not anybody that I know of, and Anisea says, any sight of our visiting Jedi. These witches are in hiding here, as the Jedi see these witches as a threat. Beings that aren't Jedi or Sith that use the Force could become an eventual threat if they want to fight against the Republic. So the Jedi Order have sent 4 Jedi to this planet to watch over the witches. But Anisea then says, didn't I tell you that this would be a safe place for our coven? And Coral says it's not safe if Osha keeps running away. Coral says, as our leader, I've always deferred to you when it comes to raising the twins, confirming that Anisea is the leader of these witches, but she also says that she is too lenient when it comes to raising them. And she says that these are not normal children. Osha and Mae are the only kids in this entire witches' coven. All the other witches are a lot older, and these two girls were created for a reason. But we then cut to their training session, and this training session gives us a lot of information about how the witches view the Force, or what they call the thread. We've heard about this thread of destiny a lot over the last year. In the Ahsoka show, we hear the great mothers talk about this thread of destiny a lot. And now we're kind of getting an explanation as to what that is. And honestly, It's very similar to how Obi-Wan or Ahsoka or Qui-Gon Jinn explains the Force to be. As Mother Anisea says, all living things are connected by the same thread. You can see a visual thread going from one hand to another. Now this is a little bit confusing because we've never actually seen the Force other than in Force lightning or as a Force ghost. But usually when the Jedi or the Sith use the Force to push or pull or choke or whatever, it's an invisible thing. But here, it's not. And that's actually common with witches. It's usually a burning flame of green. But this time it's more of a clear looking thread. Most likely to convey that these witches are very different from the witches of Dathomir and the witches from Peridia. But she goes on to say that a thread woven through all of existence. She says that some call it the Force, and they claim to use it. But we know that the thread is not a power that you wield. So this explains a lot. Yes, the Jedi and the Sith use the Force. They wield the Force. But the witches see the Force, or the thread, as something that is there. And it is not a power that is there for you to wield as a weapon. She says if you pull the thread, then everything changes. And it ties you to your destiny and binds everybody together. So the witches see the Force in a very similar way. The Jedi see it as flowing through everything and it binds everybody together. But the Jedi wield the Force. They use it all the time. The witches, on the other hand, see it, believe in it, but don't believe that it's supposed to be wielded. And if it is, it changes everything. We then get a demonstration, and I think this is going to become a very important thing later down the line, because Mother Anisea shows the power between one person versus two. And I think the reason that Mae and Osha are twins and were created that way is because the two of them together are going to be extremely powerful. And although in the current day of this Acolyte show, Mae and Osha are at opposing views, it is likely that the two will eventually come back together and work together as one Force, or Red. We then see Mother Anisea try to attack the twins, and Osha hides behind Mae as Mae blocks the blow. Again, proving that Mae is somebody that wants to be in the conflict, and Osha doesn't. We then cut to the Ascension ceremony, and all the witches are looking up at the two moons outside of Brendock, as what looks to be an eclipse is going to happen. And as this eclipse happens, it looks exactly like the logo for this Acolyte show.
Coincidence? I think not!
Logos for Star Wars shows usually mean something. Look back at Ahsoka last year, the World Between Worlds was in the logo. So obviously, we went back to the World Between Worlds in one of the greatest episodes in Star Wars history. But with this Acolyte show, the logo was a little weird. It's all red with one little blue O behind the red O. And now it's finally explained. Not only is this darkness and light, red and blue, but it's also this eclipse that's happening during the Ascension ceremony of these two girls. Mother Anisea starts the ceremony with all the witches around her. First, she starts by saying this is the first time we've done this ceremony since our exile, meaning there was a lot more of them at one point and they were exiled from where they once lived. She says that they were hunted, persecuted, and forced into hiding, which is where they are now, hiding on Brendock. And she says all of this is because some people would consider our power dark, unnatural. Sound familiar?
The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
She says that they were on the brink of extinction, and then they were blessed with a miracle, the gift of life. These two girls, Osha and Mae, the only two girls in the entire coven of witches. Mother Anisea then says what the thread has tied together, no one can separate. Again, foreshadowing that Osha and Mae's connection is going to be something extremely important come the end of this series. But the witches begin to chant, the power of one, the power of two, the power of many. As we see this ritual take place, they have to vow to protect the secrets of the coven and continue the legacy. And they start with Mae. Mae says, I do, as Mother Anisea puts a tattoo of sorts on her forehead that we saw in episode 1. And as the same thing happens to Osha, they get interrupted by the Jedi. The Jedi arrive, and as the witches are ready to fight, Mother Anisea says no violence. As in walks Master Indara, Master Sol, Master Torben, and Kelnaka. Torben is the apprentice of Indara, and he looks like he is very scared. Mother Anisea asks what they want, and Indara says, we're concerned that you might be training children here. Now, there's two reasons that she's concerned about this. One, the Jedi like to check as many children as possible around the galaxy in order to get new younglings to come to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. And two, they don't want these witches having children Because 1, how's that possible? And 2, that means their numbers are multiplying and they become more of a threat. As Mother Coral says, there are no children here. Kalnaka shrieks as he sees Mae and Osha behind the mothers. Osha steps forward in front of Master Soul and he introduces himself. Indara asks, who's their father? To which Mother Anisea says there is no father. Obviously, we've seen this before in Star Wars. It's with the Chosen One, Anakin Skywalker. All the way back in 1999 in The Phantom Menace, Shmi Skywalker explains a very similar scenario. Anakin has no father. This comes to his surprise of the Jedi, and as Mae walks out with the tattoo on her head, Master Soul says those markings were not there earlier. As the mothers say, you were spying on us and you're trying to take our children. To which Soul responds with, Jedi don't take children, which is just an absolute lie. Yes, they're taking them to Coruscant to a better place to help train to become a Jedi, but they are still taking children. And Soul takes out his lightsaber to give it to Osha and tells her that she would make a very good Jedi and asks if she wants to be tested to see if she can become one. Osha says yes as she looks back at Mother Anisea as she puts the Padawan Torben under her spell. His eyes roll back to black and he falls to his knees. As she tells Indara, if you want your Padawan to return to his right mind, I suggest you all leave. And Osha interrupts and says, Mom, I want to show them what I've learned, and I want to take the test. And Indara again says you cannot deny that we have the right to test these children if they are able to become Padawans. Mother Anisea takes Torben out of his trance and agrees that her scouts will take Osha to the Jedi's camp tomorrow at midday, and the Jedi leave. Mother Anisea gets her council together, and Mother Coral wants to go fight the Jedi now. It's likely because there's only 4 Jedi that the witches would win, but as the other mothers remind her, any drop of Jedi blood in the Republic will come and destroy them. As Mother Anisea interrupts and says we have to let them test the girls. They have no choice. Osha wants to do it, as we get some crazy information about how these twins were created. Mother Coral says, I did not bring these girls into the world just so that we could lose them to a bunch of deranged monks. And Mother Anisea says, it's not your decision, it's mine. To which Coral responds with, I carried them.
What did he say?
So obviously somebody had to carry the children. But Anisea's response is, well, I created them.
What did he say?
Now, there's a lot of debate of what's going on here. How can somebody be created using the Force or the thread itself? And again, you can point back to Anakin Skywalker being created by what seems to be the Force itself. It's remained a mystery to this day, but we are led to believe that Anakin is created by the Force itself. In Legends, however, Anakin is created because Plagueis and Palpatine try to manipulate the Force to create a dark side being. In the Force, in an act of rebellion against what Plagueis and Palpatine are trying to do, create Anakin Skywalker. Now that is Legends, but it makes sense here too. Plagueis and Palpatine were manipulating the dark side, and out popped a light side being of Anakin Skywalker. The witches aren't dark side or light side, and Mother Anisea creates these 2 twins, one being dark side and one being the light. But this is where things get really interesting. Mother Coral says, and what happens if the Jedi discover how you created them? And that's not answered. We don't know how she created them, and it might never be revealed, similar to how Anakin's created. But the witches all throughout Star Wars have had this very strong power, and we are just now getting to see how strong it really is. But their conversation is interrupted by an elder of the mothers, and she says that the test has 2 outcomes. Pass or fail. They can take the test. If they pass, the girls leave. If they fail, they stay. So if they want them to stay, they have to convince the girls to fail the test. So Mother Anisea goes to tell Osha and Mae to fail the test on purpose. She says, whatever you think the answer is in your heart, say the opposite. We then see the twins get taken to the Jedi outpost. And on their way there, Osha says that she doesn't want to lie. And Mae makes her promise that she will. And Mae goes in to test first. When she's done, she walks out and it's Osha's turn. And while she's going in, they take her blood to check the midichlorian count. We never see the results of this, but I'm assuming they're probably pretty high. Now, Osha gets the same test that Anakin Skywalker got in The Phantom Menace. There's a screen with objects on it, and she has to say what's on the screen. And the first object is a Lothcat, last seen in the Ahsoka show, but also from Star Wars Rebels, on the planet of Lothal. And Osha says, a spaceship, to which Master Soul responds with, correct. And Osha knows that he's lying. The next thing is a space station, and Mae says, a mountain. And Soul again says correct. But this time, Osha says, but that wasn't a mountain, and she got caught. Soul asks if somebody asked her to fail the test on purpose, and asks her what she wants. Soul then explains when he was taken from his family, he was only 4, and he realized that he was very different from his family as well at a very young age, just like Osha senses now. But the Jedi saw how special he was when he was a kid, and now he sees that in her. And although it may be scary now, there's a lot more children just like her at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. Thousands of Jedi just like her. So they try the test again. And of course, she succeeds. The girls get back to their home as Osha tells Mother Anisea that she didn't lie. She thought it was the right thing to do. And Mother Anisea says, if only things were that simple. And Osha says she told the truth because that's what she wants. She wants to become a Jedi. She wants her own life. And she doesn't want to share her life with Mae, as Mae loses her cool. And Mother Anisea makes her walk away. Osha sits down and Mother Anisea explains to her that destiny is not decided for you by some anonymous force. She says if you want to pull the thread, then pull it. And she says that fear should not make this decision for her. Only she is capable of making this decision. And Osha takes a minute and says she wants to become a Jedi. We then cut to Osha in her room and she's packing her things. As Mae walks in and says, I won't let you leave. And Osha says, you can't stop me from leaving. To which Mae responds with, yes, I can. I will kill you.
What did he say?
Seems a little much, but that's what Mae is. She's been murdering Jedi since the first scene of the first episode, as she grabs the drawing book from Osha's hands and runs out of the room, locking her inside. She then opens the book to see the Jedi symbol and grabs the lamp off the wall and burns it. The fire breaks out and the whole door is now in flames, and there's no way that Osha can escape through that door. However, there is another exit, through this tunnel in the wall. Osha comes upon the generator, or whatever's giving this entire place power, as it blows up, due to the fire that is now spread very quickly. Mae and Osha stand across from each other on a broken bridge, and Osha asks her, what have you done? And we're all asking that question too, because we don't know. This is all from Osha's point of view, so we don't know what happened from Mae's perspective, as we see the bridge begin to fall. And Mae falls first, but as Osha falls, Master Soul is there to catch her. Soul begins to run out with Osha as they come upon all the dead witches. Now from the looks of it, it doesn't look like these witches were killed by lightsabers, but they also definitely weren't killed by the fire. There's no fire in this room. But Soul and Osha escape from this fortress. As we cut to Osha waking up on the Jedi's ship. And as you can briefly see in the background, Torben's eye is completely scratched up. Just like we see in the present day of the Acolyte show, Torben had scars all over his face. And as we see in one of the trailers for this Acolyte show, Torben is fighting Kelnaka in this witch's fortress. But we didn't see that in this episode. Because again, it's all from the perspective of Osha, meaning this is not the last time we'll be seeing flashbacks to this place. But Osha wakes up and doesn't realize where she is or what happened. And Soul tells her that Mae started a fire and destroyed everything. But we don't know if Soul is telling the truth. And as Osha pleads to go back to try to save everybody, Soul assures her that there's nothing left there and that they're taking her to Coruscant and she can become his Padawan. And he says that she will never feel like this again, which kind of makes me think it's foreshadowing her probably feeling like this again. But it cuts to Mae standing under the bunta tree as she's survived. Obviously, she was in the first 2 episodes. And that's it. Episode 3 ends with even more questions than answers. We got this flashback of what happened on Brendock 16 years ago. We got an insane amount of information about the witches and how Osha and Mae were created. But there's still a huge missing piece to the puzzle, and that is, who killed all the witches, and how is Torben's face all scratched up? Not to mention the fact that Kelnaka's not even on this ship. But I rated this episode a 7.5 out of 10. It was my least favorite episode of the show so far. Again, we're only 3 episodes in. But rewatching it, all the information that we learned about these witches and Mae and Osha's origins were extremely important to this story. I was just disappointed because I wanted to see what really happened. How did all the witches die? And why is Kelnaka fighting against Torben and Master Soul in the trailers? But I guess we'll have to wait and see till next week. But there still is a lot of unanswered questions about this show. One of the biggest ones being, is Chimere this mysterious Sith Lord? But I explain why I think he actually isn't in this video right here.